yeah, so the aim of today really is to introduce you to the sort of new to our network. So as a network, we've been in something of a hiatus over the last few years. So this event is really trying to get things going, trying to work out really what the membership wants from this network over the next year, how we can help you, how we can support you, and really just make this the best possible thing. In terms of agenda today, so first of all, I want to introduce what the network's trying to do and give you a bit of an introduction to the committee. We're then going to have a couple of really interesting guest speakers. So we've got Lucy Morgan from NHS Strategy and Valaren from University of Cambridge. There's then going to be a very quick survey at the end. As an operational analyst, it would be remiss of me not to try to capture as much data as possible from these sorts of events. So I'm going to be polling the membership to sort of make sure that our priorities over the next year align with yours. So in terms of the new to our network, really our purpose is to further professional and personal development for our memberships over the early stage of their career. So this sort of falls into a couple of categories. So there's obviously the hard technical skills, soft technical skills. There's also networking. Sort of making sure you have wider industry awareness and making sure we do our bit to sort of bridge the gap between academia and practitioners. So we're open to practitioners and academia, open to recent graduates, as well as people making a career switch. I know the network used to be called Young in OR, but then we recognized that that's not always the case. It's open to hard and soft OR, as well as, of course, data science. Committee membership. So at the moment, there's the three of us. So I'm Jeremy Schwarting. I'm a consultant operational analyst at Serious Analysis. My work mostly covers defence and especially NATO work. And Anushka, I saw you drop online. So do you want to give a brief intro?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Anushka. I'm an analyst at the Department of Health and Social Care. I'm currently in the mental health team there. So yeah, I don't know if David's online as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And we've also got David Gowers, who's the STL, supporting us and giving us guidance, especially in the early stages. We've got Karen Down, so especially massive thanks to her for helping us get this going. A bit of a call to action on this slide. We are looking for new members. It's just the three of us at the moment. So if any of you want to help support this network, would be really appreciative. In terms of what we want to sort of do over the next year, so I think the main areas of focus: networking and personal development. So we want to make sure members have opportunities to present, opportunities to network, opportunities to learn about the wider industry. I think techniques, so education around different techniques, learning about where different techniques might be valid in different places, different industries, different sectors. I think cross-sector collaboration. So there's a lot of shared problems between different sectors. So defence is going to always be facing the same problems as medicine, as policing, as any other sector. So making sure that we recognise where those similarities are and where those differences are, and make sure that as sort of new to our practitioners and academics, we're really looking across the entire world, not just our areas. And also outreaching to other special interest groups and networks. So the ones that spring to mind, the early career researchers, is the defence special interest group and the healthcare systems. So I'd like to at this point introduce our guest speakers. So we have Valaren Bolu, who's a research associate at the University of Cambridge, and Lucy Morgan, who's an analytics manager at NHS Strategy Unit. So Valaren, could you give us a quick introduction on your career?
Well, hello everyone. So thank you for the introduction, Jeremy. My name is up there, so you can read it, I guess. I'm currently postdoc, a research associate at the University of Cambridge. So how I got here is that I did my first degree was in biochemical engineering at UCL. So I wanted to do engineering because my family has engineers and my the other side of my family had medics, so it felt like a good in-between thing. And I'd wanted to do that course for a while, but over the course of the 4 years, I realized that I did not, that I kind of was drawn towards computational projects and didn't really like the wet lab or the pilot plant. So I decided to do a master's project that was they used optimization techniques, right, to kind of design or tune like the processes in the manufacturing processes of biopharmaceuticals. So that was my master's project, and then I ended up going to do my PhD at Warwick Business School. I was doing it in operational research. So I was working on scheduling tools for optimizing the scheduling of manufacturing plants, essentially. So that's how I got into OR. And since then, I did a KTP, was a knowledge transfer partnership. So there I was working on optimization, Bayesian optimization into like a client's software suite. I then worked, so at that point, after that KTP ended, I left academia. I took a full-time job with them. And then after 2 years, I decided that that I wanted to come back to academia. Well, I decided to change jobs, and one of the roles that are available to me is the one I have now, which is in Cambridge, and is again it's a simulation and optimization thing. So basically, most of the core tenets of OR, where I'm trying to kind of develop algorithms that will help efficiently allocate donated blood to people who need transfusions. And the problem being that they have regular transfusion needs, and we have to kind of allocate blood to them such that we minimize their risk of adverse reactions. So that's my journey. I didn't really start off with like a very core or very formalized OR training. I kind of picked up stuff as I go along, and as I tell people, like I'm a generalist. I do whatever is put in front of me, or I can find that is interesting, and I use whatever techniques I can to try and help solve the problem at hand. So yeah, I didn't have like a maths or stats training. I did engineering, which they quickly give up on maths like in first and second year. So I don't know if anybody else has done engineering, but like that's especially it's the engineering courses I did. So I'm still, even though I ended my PhD like 2019, so like 6 years ago. There's lots of still like OR techniques I keep picking up depending on the problem at hand. And I guess I've got comfortable with the fact that that's based on my background. I need to be open, like being able to learn like whatever other people are specifically experts in to try and help whatever problem I'm working on at the moment. So I've mainly done a lot of like custom simulation, discrete event simulation and optimization stuff. But a lot of some of the things I'm working on, starting to look at now, requires me learning about or implementing system dynamics, which I haven't done in the past. So that's a new learning curve I'll start on. So maybe that's enough from me for now. I guess there'll be questions following this. So yes, thank you for listening.
No, thank you very much. That was really interesting. I've got one question up front very quickly. So you mentioned that you didn't really ever have that formal shift to, okay, I'm now an OR practitioner in a way. It's more of a gradual journey towards that. Yeah. So at what point did you sort of learn about OR and sort of realize that's where you wanted to head to, or realize that sort of describes?
I guess it was probably towards the latter periods of my PA. Well, because of the way that the PhD program was kind of organized in Warwick, they wanted us to do courses in our first year, like modules, but it was also very wishy-washy. So I think maybe Lucy did these also. Like I went on these NatCo courses. I'm sure there's more marketing for that somewhere, or maybe kind of can help some. Like I can't remember what the acronym is, but like they kind of give you an introduction to very fields in OR, and that's when I got to know a lot of like the people that I know in like in OR society. Like I think I might have seen Lucy on one of those, but I'm not sure. I can't remember, it's so long ago. And other people who are early career researchers in the OR society and OR network. So that's when it started, and then by the end, I think towards the end of my degree of the PhD, I ended up going to the OR conference for the first time, and so that was really, I think that kind of cemented it because before I'd been going to more of the biochem and bioprocessing conferences. So I think that's when it clicked. But then the KTP I did afterwards, there was less OR networking because of it was very firmly I was working for a biopharma company, so that kind of ticked my integration a bit. But then by the time I started my postdoc again, I came crawling back.
That's really interesting. So the other question I've got at this stage is what drew you back to the academic world, and what differences have you found between sort of working in academia and working more in industry?
So I think what drew me back was like I think that was of the opportunities that I had, this was the most interesting, and I think there's also the layer of Cambridge. It's hard to, but like there is that. The differences in and I think to an extent I kind of view, even though I was going back to academia, I kind of viewed it like my mentality was kind of like I'm working on an interesting project, which I think will have a lot of impact, real world impact. And it's something that was that I felt like I not just empathized with, but I kind of felt a kinship with due to the subject matter, because it was based on sickle cell patients and they were trying to help. So there was that. The second thing is the differences between academia and industry. I think that a lot of a lot of things are a lot more structured in industry, right? So I think on one of the first few meetings I came back into academia, it was a bit of a culture shock to me that I knew that this was going to be the case, but it was still like a bit of a getting used to the fact that, we don't do a lot of sending meeting minutes around, and like there's just lots of sometimes some bureaucracy that is essential to make sure in industry that doesn't really come into academia, but like it's pros and cons. You get a lot more freedom and flexibility. In my role at least, but obviously people can change. But when I moved back, I had a lot more flexibility and freedom of what I could do. But yes, I think those were the differences. I think everything, and in industry, everything is a lot more hierarchical than in my experience, at least, I should say. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, so a lot more freedom to sort of define your projects, a lot more freedom to potentially work on what's interesting to you. And in terms of, are there any sort of potential negatives as well associated with that? Or
yeah, I think that if you're working within a company, like you might have, if you're working on a company, you might have easier access, or depending on what you're working on, you might have easier access to the things that will enable you to get your work done, right? An issue I've had in this project is basically getting data access, even though we are the product is, the collaborator is signed on to the project in contracts and et cetera, but it's sometimes hard to get the data you need or the access you need to deliver on the project that you have signed up on. But depending on the company, right, it could be, because the company I worked in was small, so everything was focused, right? So there was kind of like a very core, very focused motivation. So if something was going to be done, things were moved in place for it to be done, and it was a lot less I guess on focus, and it's easier to get what you needed essentially. But that's been my experience, at least. I haven't worked for a big massive company, so your mileage may vary.
That makes a lot of sense. I'd be very interested to see how that access to resources changes between sort of the private sector and the government sector, because I imagine there's sort of similar differences there. Lucy, can I bring you in here now?
Sure. Yeah, do you want me to just give a background like?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. I don't know if anyone else can hear it, but your microphone is crackling quite a bit, Jeremy, for me. So I don't know if you want to reconnect or something, but anyway, right. So hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Dr. Lucy Morgan, and I'll give you a bit of background as to how I've got to the point I am at today, because I've taken kind of like a bit of a weaving road to get to where I am at the strategy unit. So, but yeah, just to give a background on the strategy unit. So I currently work in an internal consultancy within the NHS. We are the strategy unit, and people tend not to have heard of us, but it's a really great place to work. And I think internal consultancy within the NHS is a really interesting place, because we get lots of access to data, and but we also, can get access to lots of interesting problems to work on as well. So yeah, I'm currently an analytics manager, which means I manage a small team of simulation modelers, and simulation is my background. But before I got to this point, I've been basically working in operational research for the last, I guess, start of my PhD, so approximately 10 years. I did a maths undergraduate BSc before I started, and then I joined a doctoral training centre called STORY, which it stands for Statistics and OR with Impact. So my PhD basically was on the interface of statistics and OR, and I looked at trying to understand uncertainties that arose in simulation and quantify those, so that we could kind of make, the idea behind it is so that you make simulation a better tool for decision makers, because they understand the uncertainty better, and they can make the decisions in the presence of that uncertainty whilst knowing more about it and how to reduce it, etc. So I've got a cat on my desk that's currently trying to cause havoc. So yeah, at the end of my PhD, I actually then went for an academic job, and I was at Lancaster University for about 2.5 years in the management science department, where I was a lecturer of simulation to stochastic modelling, and that was a really good experience. I got to supervise PhD students. I did teaching of undergraduate and postgraduate modules, and I really enjoyed the time there. I just found that after a few years, it's like, this is a very exciting career, but I'd had a chance to do a bit of consultancy whilst I was at Lancaster, and I found that the pace and the impact that could be made from doing that was quite large. So I decided to change jobs, and I went out into industry. So kind of the reverse of what you've just heard. So I went to BT when I decided to leave my academic job at Lancaster, which in hindsight was actually quite a big leap. So I went into BT research rather than just general BT. So it was still a research role, because I still wanted to continue on using operational research and using the skills that I'd developed across my PhD and through, and not kind of throw away those academic research skills that I'd picked up. But it was such a big company that actually it felt like the impact that could be made was relatively small. So they were quite a great place to work for, I must say. They gave me lots of time for like blue skies thinking, and they let me keep a position at Lancaster. So I'm still a visiting researcher at Lancaster University even now. And I had about a day a week whilst I was at BT to kind of just do my own research work. But I didn't feel like I was getting much of the research that I was doing was not actually touching onto the problems. There's a disconnect there between the types of questions that we were being asked and actually what was possibly needed throughout the business. But I was able to continue things like supervision and research and still publish, which was nice, because I felt like it didn't limit my options when I decided to move on. Okay, and then so I just joined the strategy unit at the start of January this year. That was, I'd say, it came about because of two reasons. I had started to get a bit of itchy feet whilst I was at BT and start looking for other opportunities, but then my hand was forced because most of my department was let go at the same time. So I went through a redundancy process, which if you ever have to go through that yourself, I mean, it is quite a vulnerable time. And you kind of question, you're like, oh, why have I been let go versus other people? But I don't feel like we had any control in that process. And I was also going through quite a big stage of my life because I just had a baby also. So I feel like I had bigger things to worry about at that time. But I started to look for jobs, and thank goodness this position in simulation, which is what I'm trained in, came up at the strategy unit because I felt like it basically had my name written all over it. But obviously I wasn't guaranteed to get the job, but I was so hopeful during the process. So I did quite a bit of interviewing, and I interviewed for other roles also, but this was the one that I had my heart set on. And then I got the job, and now I'm at the strategy unit, and I do types of projects like I'm currently working on a renal project looking at how as people's disease progresses, like can we do some preventative things like primary care interventions or different types of drugs? Can we give them different types of drugs, and what will that mean for the capacity needed for renal care in the future? So I've had to learn a lot about healthcare things recently that's been quite different. And I'm also working on waiting lists, so trying to understand whether if we are going to meet the targets set by Parliament, then sorry, the government, then are we likely to meet them? What action needs to be taken to meet them, and how can we try and get people there and talking the same language between government and healthcare, etc. So yeah, some really cool projects to be working on where simulation obviously is a tool that could play into all of those, but not necessarily always the only tool. And I think having a good view of operational research across the board or data science, etc., will help. I think the last thing I want to end on is just like a few tips if you are thinking about career stuff at this time. So I think things that have helped me are that when I was in the Centre for Doctoral Training I was learning alongside lots of different people that were working on other operational research, other statistical techniques, and we gave talks to each other periodically throughout our PhD. So every Friday there'd be a talk on something new. And I learned a little bit about a lot of things. And now, as I've gone through my career, I've been able to think like, oh, this problem looks a bit like that problem I've seen. And I know somebody that's worked on that, so I could either ask them for a bit of help on where to look, or I already know a little bit about it, so I've got somewhere to kind of springboard off. So being open to learning and going to these types of events, you don't know it yet, but these might be just the types of things that actually enable you to make a connection that will serve you better in future. Because you can ask people for help. Always ask people for help. And the last thing I wanted to say was that like I had some out of luck rather than judgment, but I've had times in my career where I've actually been able to pause for a second and actually think, am I on the right track for what I want to do? And when I was leaving academia, if I'm telling the truth, I was thinking, I'm quite ready to start a family, and I don't know if it's a sustainable place for me to do that because I'm working so many hours. So that was one of the main drivers for me leaving there. And when I got made redundant, I actually got a time to pause and be like, does telecoms really like set the world alight for me? Like, is that the right place for me? Um, and no, I've always wanted to work in healthcare, and I decided that I was going to make that a priority when I was looking for new jobs. So, and luckily that came off for me. I could have ended up working in another sector, but I know that I wanted to work in something more public serving than, I guess, large business serving. When I went on to my next step, so that could have looked, it could have been a different story, but generally that's kind of the area that I was aiming for. So I would recommend that as you go through your careers, you don't just keep plodding on in your day job. Occasionally, even when you're happy, just have occasional pauses and be like, what could be next? Where do I want to go? And maybe I can adjust in the place that I'm in, but if not, then maybe you need to move. So yeah, that's me. Thanks, Jeremy.
No, I think that's really great, and I think that's a really important point. But it's very easy to get siloed into, oh yeah, I'm in the health industry, or I'm in the defence industry, or I'm in any other industry. So making sure that you're keeping an eye out on the wider world and not just locking yourself into one place. That's so important. I wanted to ask a bit about the sort of career shift from academia to BT to the NHS. So what sort of core skills really were most beneficial in supporting that, in supporting across those roles? So obviously being able to learn quickly, being able to absorb, knowing a lot about, having a wide breadth of knowledge to draw from and be able to recognize patterns. Those are clearly important. Is there anything else that you see as key?
I think as an academic, you're like a born, like your whole training is all about trying to solve problems. So and that could be from across lots of disciplines. So I think the ability to be able to like break down problems into smaller bite-sized chunks that you can actually work on and get you get off the start line of some projects is actually a really really good skill to have. And also I found it particularly useful, and this came in at BT, the fact that I'd had that wider view of lots of different problem solving techniques when they started to kind of describe problems that were a bit ill-defined and a little bit, wishy-washy. We want to kind of get to here, but we're not sure what our problem is. You're kind of better at that problem definition stage, and you're almost certainly better at identifying types of methods that could be used to solve things. So, like at BT, I'd never done multi-arm bandits before, but I ended up doing spending most of my time looking at multi-arm bandits whilst I was at BT, and I found it like completely different to my PhD. And I would never say I'm an expert in it, but I found it really exciting to do something completely different and to jump into an area that was new like that. But I wouldn't have identified it and I guess stood out to the people that I was working with for identifying it if I'd not had that academic kind of background / PhD training. Yeah.
Really sorry, multi-arm bandits.
Oh right, okay, yeah. So I guess people have heard probably more of reinforcement learning now, but it's
Okay.
so multi-arm bandits are like a special case, I'd say, of reinforcement learning. But if you've ever heard a single arm bandit in a casino, a multi-arm bandit's just kind of like literally what you would expect. You've got multiple options to pull from.
Brilliant. So it's really having that wider awareness of all the techniques available and being able to look at a new problem and say, oh, I've seen a very similar problem before. Maybe not knowing exactly how it will solve, but knowing really where to start looking and where to start the problem structuring process.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. And at an early career stage, where do you think those opportunities, where do you think we can sort of bring those opportunities in to make sure that sort of early career people have the opportunity to sort of shape their studies and get the exposure?
Well, so when I was doing my PhD, we had the chance to do things like problem solving days with industry, where industry would come, like a business would come in and with a problem they were trying to solve, and we'd like work on it for a day and try and really rapidly come up with a quick solution. That was one of the ways I kind of picked up that kind of quick, like looking for a solution and trying to, prototype it quite quickly. As far as I'm aware, there are places like the Isaac Newton Institute, and I think the Isaac Newton Institute is the one that I've been involved in the past, where they do kind of that type of day, where somebody might bring it, like I did it for cardio. After the pandemic, there was a really large backlog in cardiovascular waiting lists, and so we had a day at the Isaac Newton Institute and all tried to work together to, like, in different groups, try and come up with problems to solve for that. So there are events of that style out there, and I'd kind of look out for those, because one, again, increasing your network, and two, you get this kind of wider view of different I guess methodologies you could use.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That's really, really helpful. I think I've got a couple of questions for both of you. So the first one really is, how well did education and university prepare you for your career? So what was done well? Where were maybe the gaps that need to be addressed after the fact? And what changes have you seen throughout your life, which are maybe positive and negative in terms of education?
Do you want to take that first, Lauren?
Okay, yeah. I'll start with the positives, because I was still thinking of the negatives, the second part of the question. The first thing is, I think this is more of a thing for my specific course, undergraduate course. I think it was very good. Allowed me to pick up things from different fields, and being able to understand things and kind of assimilate them, and very good at helping me work in groups. And I think that's maybe just an engineering course thing, but I don't know. I think it is. So that has served me well, and I've moved around, like you heard my story. I never needed to like pick up something and then pick up the context particularly quickly with only like a sliver of expertise in like a specific part of it. So like in my PhD, I knew all about biotech and biopharma, but I wasn't that conversant with a lot of the optimization techniques. In my current job, I had done simulation and optimization and stuff, but I didn't know anything about hematology and stuff. So that was that. I think struggling to. I don't know that I can think of a very, very glaring negative or something that is missing in the educational process. So yeah, sorry, I have to come back to me on that. I
No,
sorry.
That's fine, and that's really, really quite a nice answer. Also, sort of being able to understand and approach problems at the right level of detail, where you can actually sort of make the impact with. And Lucy, do you have any views on what's served you well and what's maybe where things might get better?
I think, to be honest, I think my experience of education has been really positive, and the only place I could potentially suggest is having, better connections between educational places like universities and industrial places, so that people get more and more chance to create those experiences that are more like real life industry work before they go out. Because I mean, I don't know if Lauren did one, but I did a research internship before I did my PhD, and that gave me a little flavour of what like a PhD would be like. I never did an industry one, so I never really thought about it before I actually went out into an industrial role, and it was kind of different to what I'd expected. So yeah, just setting up those opportunities for students seems like a good thing, and some universities do that really well already. So
I maybe have a somewhat negative now. I think it's more of a double-edged sword. So I think I think my experience is probably the opposite of Lucy. I think my education, maybe it's again my course, was focused a lot on trying to get us like industry exposure and experience. So I felt for a long time, maybe even still now, like I don't know enough about obviously when I first started out, I didn't know as much about the academic pathway and what I needed to do and the nuances and stuff. I think maybe, I don't know if this is the case, but I've only seen it stuff done on places being good in like industry exposure and others being good at letting you know like what you need to do academic path. This has been my experience, but I think that also I think we probably need to hear more from people like Lucy and I who have gone back and forth, right? So you know that you're not sticking to one path. And you don't have to stay in academia forever. You don't have to stay in industry forever. And you can also go back and forth and also collaborate both ways. So maybe that's something, but I don't know if that's if that's already been taken care of.
No, I think that makes sense. And I think sort of coming from my background, I did engineering as well. So I think that was something I recognized was you went into the academics or you went into industry, but there wasn't necessarily that emphasis on maybe you might want to do both. Maybe there's value in sort of looking at both sides of the world. I think that the sort of final question I have is beyond sort of your traditional education, what resources and what support did you rely on and benefit most from during your career, and what would you recommend younger people or people coming into their career in OR to prioritize in terms of sort of beyond work and beyond education?
I would say building up a network is incredibly important. Yeah, I mean, it's just you do by going to conferences and things like that, or events. And I know that industry people do now come to conferences, and because I've been to a few myself from a non-academic role, I just think you bump into the same people over and over again. So you might as well start to get to know them day one, as opposed to, 5 years down the line when you're like, oh, I awkwardly have seen you 50 times, but we've never said hello. But I do think that that the networking aspect for me has served me so well. And I don't know whether this is because I've got zero shame, but I will just ask people for help if I need it, and I like that. Who doesn't like being asked a question about something they're an expert in? So I like it when people ask me questions, and I like to, go and get help from people. I won't try and sit with a problem that I'm stuck on for too long, because there's always somebody out there that's probably tackled something similar. So yeah, use this opportunity or any opportunity you've got to kind of build on your professional network, and you don't just have to be professional, like they can become your friends too. So yeah.
I think that asking for help is so important, because it's quite a scientific field. So you do get people sometimes getting very, very engrossed in their own problems, and maybe taking a step back and asking around, you might find, oh, that person's looking at exactly the same problem, but maybe from a different view. And for Lauren, did you have any views on?
I'm gonna second what Lucy is saying. But I also, like, obviously this is depending on where you're working, you may not have the opportunity to go to conferences, either because for whatever reason. So things like this, right? I know that they're like the special interest groups and like the local groups in in OR Society and other learner societies, go to those. Yeah, to the webinars. I would say exploit the learner societies as much as possible. So I'm part of your here, some OR Society, but like I used to be, I think I still technically pay for my chemical engineering institution thing, right? So if you're in two learner societies or more, do exploit them, sign up to the things, go to the things. Yeah, and yeah, don't be afraid to talk to people. I sometimes was like that because I was scared that I wouldn't that I wouldn't know enough and I'll be caught with my pants down with like I don't know what I'm talking about. But people are generally gracious.
And you soon start to realize, don't you, that as soon as somebody's out of that like talk or whatever, they don't want to talk about their work necessarily. They just want to like see you're a person, like,
yeah,
or go to the pub, have
yeah,
a drink. Yeah, it's nice.
yeah. And again, to agree with what Lucy is saying, like you especially if you're in one community for a while, you see everybody well somewhat regularly at these things every year, every once a year, and like even though they're not your colleagues and like you go to work with them, like they are kind of your colleagues. You've gone through life with them and you may see them in between like their life events, and like it just enriches one's life, right? I think personally. So there is that, and they'll depending on who you make friends with, they can bug you to come to other things which will be actually useful for you. Like someone Laura, who Lucy knows, she is in the ECR committee or was in the ECR committee. Like I met her once and she bugged me to come to do things and bullied me to contribute to stuff, and it is only made my career and life better. So there is that. So make people who peer pressure you to make good decisions.
It's a brilliant sort of motto to live life. Make sure you're sort of getting to things, make sure you're talking, make sure you're engaging, and actually working with a community rather than sort of isolating yourself and trying to solve everything on your own. I think that's sort of questions I had. I'm going to open up the floor to the audience. So either put your hand up or put messages in the chat if you have any questions.
I did get a question through that I'll keep anonymous, like who asked it, just in case they don't want to be like named as what they asked it, but they did ask what taking a pause looks like, because I mentioned that I'd taken a pause and that helped me to like reassess where I wanted to go, and whether it was like more get a careers advisor or have some leave and be a bit introspective. So maybe I can give a little bit more background on that. I have never used a careers advisor, I should say, but I've just spoken to a friend of mine that has used a careers advisor, and said it was super useful when deciding whether to go for like the next management position up, because she'd been doubting like whether she was ready for that or not, and they helped her reassess like what her goals were and what she actually where she wanted to go, and it just helped her kind of clear out all those doubts that she had, and also make her more focused on the path that she wanted to take. So if you are thinking of doing that, then I think that's a really cool idea, and I'm currently thinking about doing it myself, just generally, not because I want to move on from the strategy unit, but just because maybe I want to get a promotion, or maybe I want to make sure that I've got a plan. But for me, it looked more like for the first one, when I was leaving academia, I was actually in post and I was working really hard, and I didn't want to leave the position that I had before I had like a solid offer from somebody else, because I just didn't want to like give up the income that I had coming in, because I'd just bought a house, etc. And you don't want to put yourself at risk like that, do you? So the first time around, I was much more asking family and friends, giving them a bit of a rundown of what my life looked like, and trying to get some advice and trying to understand what their careers looked like, particularly with people I'd gone through like my PhD with and that were a similar stage to me, asking them like where they were in their careers and how they were feeling and like their work-life balance. I found that really useful. And that helped me make my decision. And the second time round, I did have like a large portion of space to actually think about it, and that did help from a perspective of realigning me with what I wanted to do. It was a great opportunity for that, but it was because I had no work, past a certain date. I knew I wasn't going into anything. That was quite difficult from the perspective of not knowing what was coming next. And I did feel like, although I interviewed for mostly things that were on my my wanted list, most wanted list. I did also interview for a few different other places that were big business just because of my experience of having been in BT. Those interviews, I feel like when you're in an interview, it's almost like a two-way street, isn't it? You're interviewing them and they're interviewing you, and I didn't get a good feeling back from those experiences, so I didn't end up going that way. But yeah, no, I think that probably gives a bit of an answer to that.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got a question from Karen. Have either of you benefited from a mentor during your career, and what support did you find most beneficial?
Let me take that first, if you don't mind. I think so. It's almost as if you're reading my mind. I have benefited from a mentor. I think you're sort of informally mentored by your supervisors along the way, but like it's never really said as much or like categorized as much. But formally, I once what's called the postdoc academy in Cambridge. There's the thing here, like they set up a formal mentorship program. So I did sign up to that, and I did get assigned to a mentor. It was helpful because one of the things I wanted help with, or wanted someone to talk to about, is the fact that, as I've kind of implied, my journey has meant that I've always been somewhat the odd one out in wherever I've gone. So like I'm currently at the biostatistics unit. So my background is in statistics. I'm the only OR person there. Actually, no, there's one new person who did OR, but like he's not. But anyway, so I still have this mentor, although the formal mentorship program is over, and he was very helpful to me in kind of thinking through what I want to do, how I navigate the academia, and then also encouraging me to think about applying for fellowships or lectureships. And I actually just submitted a fellowship last week, which is why I'm slightly still recovering from that. So that has been useful, and I think that I don't know that the OR Society has I'm not sure, maybe Karen will correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a formal mentorship scheme, but I think that informally I have asked people for things and they've given me advice and stuff like that. But that's been my experience with mentors. Very useful. Thank you, Lucy.
Yes, we do have a mentoring program that was started last year, so it's still in the early stages, but it does exist.
Okay, good.
Okay, I didn't know that either, to be honest. I've actually also got a mentor, but again, this was a bit cheeky of me because when I found out I was going into a healthcare role and that I'd not really previously worked in healthcare, I felt like, oh, I'm probably going to be okay on the OR side of things, but I don't know anything really about the NHS and how it's structured and stuff like that. So I had a look through like my contacts of who I know that works in healthcare, and I asked somebody that I felt like was a few years ahead of me to basically just be my informal mentor and just meet with me. And we had a chat before I started my job, and then a chat a few months in. And so it's not like something that we do very often, but it's more of a like keeping on top of like, what's he doing? What am I doing? So, and I was just really grateful that he was open to doing that. Hopefully we can work together at some point as well, because he works in the same area, so it's got another, like, a double barrel. So I don't think it's you can approach people and ask them to be a mentor as well. You don't just have to wait or join a scheme. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. It's interesting to sort of hear the different ways of approaching, of sort of helping to structure your career, and also trying to sort of learn a bit more about bits of the world you maybe don't know and need to get up to scratch with. No other questions, so I think I'll move on to sort of membership priorities bit. So something I'm quite keen on using this first session to do is to make sure that over the next year or so we're sort of aligning what events we're hosting with what the members actually want. So put up so there should be a poll on Zoom. If you could put that up, Karen. Brilliant. So it's 3 questions. What areas should the new to our network prioritize over next year? So a bit of technical skills, a bit of soft skills, networking, cross-sector collaborations with other parts of the ORS, and then other. Second question, what sort of events would you be interested in attending? So these would be things like the lightning talk. So something that has been successful in the past is sort of 5-minute briefings given by members on areas that interest them. Networking events, webinars, so potentially deep dives into different techniques or disciplines, panel discussions, and then collaboration with other networks. And finally, a bit more of a logistics one about whether you'd prefer sort of virtual or in-person events. So I'd be really grateful if you could take a couple of seconds to think about what you'd want to get out of the New to Our network, and hopefully help us to give as good a program as possible. Also have 78%. I'd give it just a couple more seconds, and I think close out. Brilliant. So thank you very much everyone for attending. Thank you especially for Lauren and Lucy for giving up your time and giving your stories. It's really interesting to learn about sort of how you sort of had very similar but almost opposite experiences of jumping between academia and industry, and the sort of challenges that came out of that, and the lessons learned along the way. So I'm really grateful for your time. I'm really grateful for everyone for attending this, and I hope to see you over next year and over next events. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for both of you for speaking today. It's been really interesting, and a really good talk from you both. Thank you.
And I think the last thing for me, so we'll start putting together a program of events based on the feedback from today, and I think that the key one that's definitely in the calendar will be the New to OR conference, which will be in June next year. But we'll make sure that we communicate upcoming events early and make sure that they're interesting and exciting. But thank you very much everyone for attending, and I hope you have a really good rest of your day and the rest of your week.